What's good, people? It's about that time to randomly relate, reverse rants, no hate. So, I want to talk a little bit about UFC and how when it first started, and we were able to watch it. Um, Initially, I wasn't really drawn to it. Now, I just love fighting sports, combat sports, period. Um, so for me, it was like I would watch it, and you know, I wasn't really. It wasn't something where it was like, yo, I gotta see that UFC. I gotta watch UFC. Or it was just like, you know, um, I'll see it. And it was a friend, someone that I knew. Now he couldn't really fight at all. He basically just liked to watch violent sports, and it was new to him. Now we liked the movies that had that pit fighting element, and that's kind of what it reminded me of because back then they used to like pull hair. They would hold your karate gi and all kind of like trying to get that position, and it just wasn't that appealing to me at that time. The Hoist Gracie days, I remember watching him kick, and we would laugh because it's like his kicks were just like he just throw his leg up just to keep distance. He didn't really have any kicks at all. His legs, his lower body was like useless. As far as it being effective, as far as kicking, he just used his kicks for distance. No power behind him, no real kicks, no. And I was watching, and it was like this little guy just beating all these guys, and he did it the same way, like all the time. Like he ended up getting on him and wrap his legs around him, and finally, pull the hair and pull the clothes and punch, throw elbows down, and most of the match was on the floor, and it was kind of just like, you know. So anyway, moving forward, Tito Ortiz was actually the guy that I saw fight that got me to start really watching the UFC. And I remember like we just had a bunch of tapes we'd watch, and it was like, okay, we're watching. And after I saw Tito, so now we're talking Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, Kevin Randleman. These guys got my attention. Like, okay, hold up. So now the UFC, it just felt completely different. It didn't feel like I was watching the same thing at all. It felt completely different. It looked different, and I just remember after that point, I started watching it. Sega Dreamcast had the actual UFC video game. I had it. I used to beat everybody down with Tito. But at that point, it was like, okay, now I'm following the UFC to watch what's going on. And I remember a friend of mine asking me like when Chuck was going to fight Tito, like, yo, think Tito gonna do it? I think Tito gonna knock him out. And I'm watching Chuck, and I'm like, I don't know about that. And like, I want Tito to win, but I don't know, man. Like Chuck, just to me, his style was just awkward, man. Because like one thing that was funny about watching Chuck fight, Chuck was the better striker, pretty much out of everybody he fought. He just had better striking and movement. What was funny about watching Chuck, man, is the guys would try all night to get him down, and they could not get Chuck on that damn floor. And watching the frustration in their faces when they finally got him down, and he just somehow popped right back up with them holding on to him, and he popped right back up. And it was just funny, man, because Chuck was just he would he would wind up knocking these guys out if Chuck and he liked to keep on the feet. Chuck didn't want to have to wrestle and hold, and he wanted to just either punch you out or kick you out, like either one or the other. He wanted to strike, and so I remember saying, I don't know, and I remember like, all right, so I know you want Tito to win, but like, what you think? I'm like, honestly, Tito gonna have to. If Tito can land something, knock him out, or if he can get him down, which that's the thing. Chuck is just different, man. I'm like, he's like, so you think I'm like, as far as choosing, I'm like, all right, so this is what I'm gonna say. I'm pulling for Tito, but honestly, I think Chuck is gonna win. I think Chuck is gonna just basically. I think Chuck is gonna be too much for Tito. And they like, but why you think that? Because that's, I'm like, nah, it's not about who I want to win. I'm saying you, I mean, I hope Tito can find a way to win, but I think Chuck is going to put it on him, man. And people didn't understand that. They fought, Chuck put it on him twice. Now, of course, you know the last time, like last year, 2 years ago, something like that. And Chuck pretty much coming out of retirement, and like Chuck's not the same. Tito's not the same either, though. You know, but Tito has more left in the tank now than Chuck did. So now they're 2-1. But you know, Chuck was done, man. He's, you know, still got it in him to want to go in there and fight. Okay, I remember watching Chuck and Randy, and I'm like, if Randy can take him down, if he can get him down and get some work in there, but if he stands too long, eventually Chuck's gonna catch him and knock him out, man. Like he has to take it to the floor. He has to, you know, and we know how those fights went. But it's one of those things where it's funny because I'm watching, just sitting here watching this is UFC 3, and I'm watching it, and I'm sitting there like, wow, I just finished watching 4, and I watched 5, and I'm sitting here thinking like, man, it's like I'm getting that same feeling all over again. Like when I first watched it, and I'm thinking, man, it's so funny how this is the UFC right here, man. Like this, it's just so funny how it doesn't look anything. It doesn't even remind you anything remotely close to what it looks like now. And I also remember, even like I'm jumping forward to when like Royce Gracie came out of retirement to fight Matt Hughes, and I remember people saying like Royce Gracie is the Ray Robinson of MMA, and I'm like, no. I mean, I understand what you guys are saying, but the UFC is young in age as far as how long it's been around. And Royce only had 10 fights. Ray had 170 something fights. You know 180 something fights or whatever it was. He had more fights than that, but I'm saying how no. I'm like, no. I think see Royce came out in his time, he was able to win his 10 fights and, you know, did better pretty much. He got a great reputation because beating Dan the B7 and beating Ken Shamrock guys that's much bigger than him, heavyweights, and he's like 175. But you know, they weren't like seasoned fighters, man. They weren't. These guys, like when you're born into something, it's different. And I remember when he was gonna fight Matt Hughes, and people was like, "Oh, Troy's gonna shoot, yo, he's gonna show him, he's gonna teach these guys." Because you know, every generation, you know, the fighters get older, they phase out. The fans of that era always say, "Oh, those guys in my era would have killed these guys." You always get that. And I remember thinking, I said no. Like, man, he was going to kill this guy, man. I'm like, man, the game has changed since what Royce was doing. No, Royce is not going to. I'm like, he's going to get destroyed. We saw how that fight went. And just time watching things develop. I remember when Brock Lesnar came from WWE and people were saying, hey, man, this guy's a fake fighter. He this, he that. And I think a lot of people that knew, if you knew who Brock was before he came to the WWE, then you knew that he was a wrestler before that. Like, you know, Olympic wrestler. I ain't talking about the, you know, chairs and tables and jumping off ropes. But I remember people saying he was going to be a joke. And I remember when he came, he lost to Frank Mir when he got tapped out with the ankle lock, you know, leg lock. But it was like, you know, Brock came in there, and I think he thought his strength and his size was going to be enough. And I mean, he was holding his own until he got caught in that lock. You remember he tried to literally drag Frank Mir across the floor, and like Frank locked on and he couldn't get out. And all right, tap. But he came back in the rematch. He crushed Frank Mir. You know, he beat Randy Couture. He became world champ, heavyweight champ on his third fight, something like that. And I remember people saying, "Oh man, Brock is a big bully, and if Randy was his size, he only beat him because he's big." And I'm like, Okay, well, Tim Sylvia was every bit as big as Brock and taller. You know, not muscular though. He wasn't muscular, but he was a huge guy. Okay, Randy beat him with no problem. Randy made it look easy. He made it look easy beating Tim Sylvia. And they used to say that all Brock do is lay on you and just punch and punch. And I'm like, look, the guy's a wrestler, man. Why? What is he supposed to do? I mean, like always when people say a person should do this and do this, like so he should fight in a way to they say, oh, to make it exciting. No, you fight to win, not to make fans not boo you or whatever. Because if they want you to lose, they're not cheering for you anyway. You're only saying that because you don't like the guy, you know. And when Brock got sick and he, lost fights and just looked bad, couldn't take shots at all, like to the body, nothing. He just was look weak. And with those years that went by, he went back to WWE. Then he came back and he beat Mark Hunt. And I remember, like, and then, well, we know they samples came back that he, had something in his system. But he fought different. He just pretty much was on backpedaling all night. Just kept throwing that jab, throwing shots at Mark Hunt. And it was just like, one of those things, man. But it just felt funny when you thinking like, okay, it went from what it started as to Brock Lesnar being there. I remember James Toney came in there and embarrassed himself against Randy Couture, and it was like, I'm like watching like, James, come on, man, you're not going to come in there into the UFC and do to this guy what come on. Just like Randy couldn't come into boxing, and if it was just straight up boxing, come on, this was boxing. No. So you needed to learn. I mean, for you to, if you catch him, yeah, it could be lights out. Like that didn't happen. So it's just kind of funny, man, when I watch what the UFC used to look like versus what it looks like right now, man, and how different it is. It don't even feel like I'm watching the UFC, and it's like, yeah, these are fights, the whole events. I just watch everything, man. I remember really from the era of when they used to have Rec and Uriah Faber was a champion over there before he came over to UFC. And to me, Uriah Faber was in his prime. His best years was at Rec and King of the Cage. And when he came to UFC, that's when he finally lost. And no, he lost to Mike Brown first. That was still in Rec before he came. I don't know. Mike Brown didn't last too long after that. He beat Uriah Faber. I remember Uriah having a couple of losses, and remember him in the UFC. Uriah was good, man. Anderson Silva. I mean, there's many guys. I can't remember everybody's name, man. That I also what's the big guy? Alistair Overeem. I remember when he beat Brock, and I remember people saying this guy Alistair Overeem is garbage. I used to watch him, I think, fight at K1. And he also has a brother that fights. And I used to watch them. And when I look at what the UFC has become now, it's like you want to see these companies grow. You want to see them have success, and you want to see the sport stay around, man. I've always been into like combat sports, man. Always. Way more than like football, basketball. Even though I love to play basketball, I don't like certain things. I just don't even really care to, like, if I see it or not anymore. But like, mixed martial arts, boxing, and stuff like that, man. Muay Thai, all that, collegiate wrestling. I watch all of it, man. But yeah, it was just like, it's a good feeling when I sit back and I look at UFC then and look at now, and having Bellator around, different platforms where you get to see good fights, man. But it felt so funny just sitting here watching this. I started laughing. I said, you know what? Let me do a quick video on this, man, because yeah, it's just one of those things when you just look back and you see how things change. Because even my kids, they look at this and go, "That's UFC? Wow, it looks so different." Like, yeah, it was so different. Even had Jim Brown on here. It was. This was the time though, right here, what I'm looking at, where I really couldn't just, it just didn't intrigue me, man. But it was like, it was the fact that it's combat sports, things like that was like, okay. But yeah, I mean, overall, it got to the point where it blew up, man. It became huge, and we see what MMA is right now. So, anyway, that's all I want to say on this video, man. And catch y'all on the next one.